Welcome to all of it. We got all of it.
All of it. All of it.
Our guest is Secretary Madeleine Albright, Bryan Cranston, Tank and the Bangas, Barry Jenkins, Celia Keenan-Bolger, Aaron Lee Carr, Esperanza Spalding, Gideon Glick, Helen Yoyemi, Fab Five Freddy, Banga Akanabe, Brene Brown, Tony Goldwyn, Tandy Newton, Jake Gyllenhaal. Welcome to all of it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
What a pleasure.
Hi. This is so fun.
I'll see you tomorrow.
We're here every day, 12 to 2. Impromptu concert.
I love it.
I love it. I love it.
I was there for the love of it.
You must tell the truth.
I'm sure everyone's perspective is unique.
There's a lot of truth about the pain of being an immigrant, but they're jokes. We find the funny.
It's our strength.
At what point do you think women's health care will stop being a political issue?
When half of Congress can get pregnant.
Ran out of words, but we do what we do. We don't have no board, so we got to trade twos.
So we trade twos. I was this really dope groove, and Alison was so nice to meet you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our February Get Lit with All of It book club event with the author of the evening, Jason Mott, author of Hell of a Book, and our musical guest, Gangstagrass. For those of you who are members of our book club, who come every month, welcome back. Good to see you. For folks who are just joining us for the first time, welcome to you as well. My name is Alison Stewart. I host an afternoon show on New York Public Radio, WNYC, called All of It with Alison Stewart. That's handy. Let's get the pretty slide. My hair was longer then. It's an arts and culture program, but that kind of only scratches the surface. We talk to thinkers, doers, makers, creators, and of course, writers. And we have this handy little book club that has turned out to be this fantastic partnership with the New York Public Library. We do it every month. We are very excited. Our book clubs are not like, you know, drinking Chardonnay, sipping with your mom book clubs, although that's fine too. We always have a musical guest. It's more of like a book party, a book get together. So at a party, what do you have? You have music. We have a musical guest tonight, Gangstagrass, picked by our author. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. 2 performances as well. And then stay till the very end of the program because we're going to announce our March Get Lit author. And I have a hint, think Tony Awards, many, many Tony Awards. So let's kick things off now with our author of the evening. Jason Mott's novel, Hell of a Book, won the 2021 National Book Award for Fiction. Fun fact, Jason's also the author of the best-selling novel, The Returned, which was adapted into a TV series that ran for 2 seasons on ABC. Thanks to our partnership with the New York Public Library, 1,478 of you were able to check out an e-copy to read along with us. We're going to take your questions for Jason in just a few moments, so start thinking about those now. You can put them in the chat if you're watching on YouTube, or you can send us to us via Instagram at all of it WNYC. So let's get this started with Jason Mott. Jason, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going forward. That's the good direction. What did writing this novel and centering it around a book tour offer you creatively as a writer?
It gave me a chance to kind of do something very different than what I've been doing, something I've been wanting to do for a while. Like I've been wanting to write a comedy for a long time. And so it felt really good to make fun of publishing and make fun of the whole publishing industry and some of the silliness that goes on there. So yeah, it was my chance to break free from like the box that I had kind of gotten pushed into and do something completely out of field. And it felt so much fun.
Well, you know, you've boxed all of us interviewers into a corner. Because we know what questions the author hates to be asked.
Exactly.
And here I have to think of interesting questions to keep you engaged.
All part of my plan, all part of my master plan.
There you go. What is a question that you haven't been asked that you would like to answer?
Oh, that's cheating. How are you going to ask me a hard question? That's a great question. Let me think about that. What's your next question? Just all right. Ping pong it back to you.
All right. I'm going to come back around. I'm a journalist. I will.
I know you will.
All right. When we first meet our author, he likes the ladies. He likes other people's ladies. He likes to drink a lot. He's very non-emotional about tragedies, specifically these tragic shootings. So we asked our Instagram or book clubbers, because we do polls before the events. We asked our readers on Instagram whether they were rooting for the author. 83% said yes. What do you think about that high percentage?
That's good. That's what I wanted. Like I wanted a character that people liked in spite of his flaws. Because I think it's really hard to create a character that is obviously screwed up and is obviously making mistakes and making bad decisions. But if you can get people to really like the character in spite of that, I think that makes them human. Like, we all have flaws and we're all messed up, but like, we want to be liked by people.
What was something you did or you thought about as you were writing the author to make him at least appealing, if not likable, at least that someone would root for this person?
I made it so that, so I kind of patterned him after myself in certain ways where like he doesn't take himself very seriously. And I wanted that to be a very heavy theme with the character. Because I think that's how you make people, not necessarily make people like you, but like, I think there's a limit to how seriously you can take your life. Like, life is obviously a very serious thing. You get one shot at it, but you got to laugh at yourself. And the author in the novel, I feel like he laughs at himself very often, and that invites the reader to laugh along with him, which I think is a really good way to learn to like people.
Even the characters in the novel, like the author, Rennie specifically, I found so interesting. He takes this interest in helping this guy who gets his name wrong, makes assumptions about his education, barfs out his window of his limousine. So when I asked our readers on Instagram why they thought Rennie wanted to help the author, someone wrote this beautiful thing. Rennie sees the potential of the author and understands who he can be, a mirror image. Who is Rennie in this man's life?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Rennie sees in the author almost the way a father sees in a child, like the potential to be something important and the potential to be someone who makes a difference in a very harsh and cruel kind of world. And Rennie wants that for him. And also Rennie just wants to help him. Rennie can see through all the shenanigans that the author puts up. Like, the author has this very well manicured kind of guise of even the alcoholism and the drunkenness is kind of a bit of an act sometimes for the author. It's something he uses to keep people at bay. And Rennie is really gifted and he can see through that. He knows you've got a person here who is hurting, but also who wants to say something, but doesn't know what he wants to say yet. And Rennie desperately wants to help him out with that.
In Hell of a Book, we meet Soot and his parents, and we get the side story about Soot's father, which is interesting, that he was this talented artist, but his father only allowed him to draw portraits of white people. And it's something that Soot's father feels some shame about. What did this anecdote relay to the reader about Soot's father and the way Soot was raised?
Yeah, so that scene in particular was a really, there's a lot going on there in regard to how we teach our children, particularly minority children, to survive in America. And so in that scene, you know, Soot's grandfather, he wanted his son to survive, and he saw in him his artistic talent, his artistic ability. And he was like, if you can just, you know, if you can draw white people, you can make a living. Like, that is a way to earn your living in this world. Just don't draw black people. And that became like the friction point between the two of them, because Soot's father wanted to draw people eventually who looked like he did. And that was something that his father, you know, Soot's grandfather, saw as detrimental, something that you'll wind up in poverty doing that. Just, you know, go with the flow, do what's popular, and drawing white people will be a way that you can earn a living and be successful. And so when his son turns his back on that, that becomes a huge fissure between the two.
When you think about Soot, because of, you know, how dark his skin is, and throughout the book, people comment on it. They're always commenting on it. Some people are commenting on it cruelly. Other people are noting it. First of all, did you want to make a distinction between people noting it versus people noting it and assigning inferiority or assigning something to it?
Yeah, very much. Skin tone, color, colorism, like all those things are very important parts of American life for minorities. Doesn't mean it should be that way, but that is the reality of the existence in which we call it all inhabit. You know, if you're black, you're too black, you're not black enough. Like, there's never a right shade of being black. I think that's almost a really sad rite of passage as kids growing up. Like, you get you're too dark, you're too light, you're too this, you're too that. And so I wanted to have a discussion about all those things that everyone's trying to navigate, and talk about the fact that, you know, they're rooted in slavery if you go back far enough. And there's this dark legacy that has been marching forward for generations that shows itself in these very strange and unique ways that we all just kind of sweep under the rug and don't talk about. So that was my attempt to bring that conversation to the forefront.
Soot's parents equate invisibility with safety, that idea of taking care of their child. But by the end of the novel, the kid wants the author to really see him. On the other hand, the author isn't invisible at all because he's famous on the cover of magazines and on morning shows. So first of all, how much of a nod, and am I just being an English lit major geek, How much of a nod is this to Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, which also has an unnamed author and also talks and writes about racism?
Yeah, it's definitely a small nod to that for sure. So good key on that one.
How did you want to play that tension about invisibility versus hypervisibility? What's gained, what's lost with each?
Yeah, I think that that's the crux of the novel is what happens to people who go unseen or who are only seen for in a particular way, in a particular light. When I grew up as a kid, I was bullied a lot, and like I wanted desperately to be able to disappear, to get out of those situations where I wasn't bullied, and to just not be seen. And you fast forward that, and the problem with that invisibility is you lose your voice. You're no longer able to be a part of the world, a part of the community. You're no longer able to defend yourself, to interact. You lose your identity. And there's a lot of that is happening generationally to Black people and to other minorities where like our stories have not been told. We've been invisible for so long that we lose part of ourselves and part of our heritage and part of our narrative, even to ourselves. And so at some point, we all kind of have to step forward into this point of visibility, into this point of light. But that's actually really terrifying to do. It's a very tough thing to do, to be seen by people and to really be understood by people.
Do you mind sharing why you were bullied as a kid?
Why wasn't I being bullied? Growing up, bullies are bullies. They will bully you for anything at any point in time. Like I said, your skin is too much of a color. Your shoes are weird. Like shoes were the big thing as a kid. Like growing up, in especially, small town communities, like, you got the newest shoes, newest Jordans, the new Nikes, the new whatever. If you don't have them, which I never did, like that becomes a point of friction. You're not cool enough. You're not whatever. So yeah, bullies will find anything to pick on you about.
How did you deal with it?
I read a lot.
Yeah.
I was the quiet kid who just read books and tried not to provoke anybody and just tried to kind of mind my own business. Like I was that really nerd kid who sat in the back of the bus and just had a book to read every evening on the way home, every morning on the way to school, because that kind of kept me off the radar. That kept me invisible. If I was just tucked away with my book, I had no reason for anybody to kind of like come and find me, which they always did. But that was my defense mechanism, to just kind of retreat into this place and to disappear. And I did that for a long time.
We're talking about defense mechanisms. It made me think about the coping skills that the author has come to use, whether they're good for him or not. He has methods for coping with trauma and being around trauma. How have those coping skills worked for your character, the author, and how have they worked against him being a healthy person?
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely worked for him in that he's kind of created this imaginative universe that he kind of exists in. And that gets him away from the reality that is very harsh and very terrifying and very kind of overwhelming. So yeah, like his imagination is his saving grace. And at the same time, he's losing control of it. He's kind of plunged into alcoholism and womanizing, like all these kind of distractions from the real problems of his life. And there's only so long you can do that. There's only so long you can be distracted from the issues that you really have. Because if you don't face them, they will eventually find you and swallow you whole. And so he's in that point where he needs to find that balance.
People who are watching on YouTube, don't forget, you can put questions in the chat, or you can go to our Instagram at allofitwnyc and pose your questions for Jason Mott and his book, Hell of a Book. Okay, so the title says Hell of a Book, but when you open up, there's actually the subtitle, or the altogether factual, wholly bona fide story of big dreams, hard luck, American-made mad kid. And then the dedication page says, for all the other mad kids. Okay, who are you talking about, first of all?
Yeah, the mad kids are just those awkward, bullied, strange kids that grow up. And eventually they learn to kind of give that up. Like eventually at some point in your life, you learn to fit in with the rest of the crowd. If you don't, you go mad in a very particular kind of way. Like you just become super weird and super strange. But I think those are the most unique people. Like I think I'm very much proud of myself where like I never managed to fit in. I never found a way to fit in. I always became the outlier, and that has taken me very far in life. But it also is something very difficult for kids to do. So I wanted, the younger me and the kids like me to have a book where they could actually see themselves and find out that, hey, it's all right to be that weird little mad kid.
So you're okay with kids who read the book. You'd like kids to actually read the book.
Yes. Not 5-year-olds. Obviously, I think they wouldn't quite get it. But yeah, like young kids, teenagers, like it very much is a book that I hope that they will come to and they will find parts of themselves in, because the hardest thing is when you're an outcast, you're that weirdo. The hardest thing is to trust in the fact that that's okay. Like that is a very difficult thing to do, is to say to yourself, it's okay to be the weird kid. And it's actually like a good thing to be the weird kid. So I hope they find the book and I hope it helps them.
Why did you wait so long in the book to let us know that the author was Black?
There was just a little bit of playing with the author, how far removed he was from reality, just how far down the rabbit hole of defense mechanisms he had built. Because there are all these layers I think we build up throughout our existence where you get overwhelmed by what you see in the news and what you just are constantly living through, and you want to escape. Like, you want to just shut it down for a while and not be a part of it. And the author has managed to do that. So this story is kind of about what happens when you go to that extreme where you finally do find, like, quote unquote color blindness, which is never a thing. But the author somehow has gone blind to his own identity, and he has to kind of come back to that at some point.
I'm going to take a tangent. I'm going down a side road for a minute. This book, was it written before the murder of George Floyd?
No, it was not written before the murder of George Floyd. It was after that.
Did anything in the story change? I mean, because obviously books take a long time to write.
Yeah.
Was there something about the narrative that changed after the summer of 2020 and all the response to it?
Yeah, so not a whole lot. And actually, let me amend that. Like, actually, I did write it right before George Floyd because we were selling it. We were trying to find a home for it around the time of the George Floyd incident. And we didn't know what to make of that and how to deal with that, because so much of the book is trying to acknowledge all these moments, Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray, like all these moments, Medgar Evers, like there's so many moments we're trying to acknowledge in the book and bring discussion to, that when the George Floyd thing happened, there was a sense of like, what do we do with that now that we're trying to find a home for the book? Do we somehow fold that into it? Is that trying to capitalize on it? It's like, what do you do with that? But the final answer became like, there's no need to fold that in, because sadly, this book will always be current, because there will always be another George Floyd incident. There will always be another Freddie Gray. There will always be another Medgar Evers. This is not a book that happens now and is over now. Like, this is sadly an ongoing thing that America will one day have to resolve.
In the book, it's so deft and funny. The idea of the author, when he's getting media trained, shouldn't be too Black. But then people are telling him he needs to use his platform to address issues about Black Americans. But at the same time, it's a good thing that they can't tell that he's Black with the book he's written. Don't have to name names, but are those based on any conversations you've had in your career in publishing?
Yeah, there's definitely basis on some very indirect kind of private conversations about what you should be writing about. And it doesn't happen obviously as heavy-handedly as does in the book, where someone flat out tells you don't write about this and don't write about that. But the way it happens is in just kind of general requests to like, hey, what do we change this character, change a few of these lines? And like, in your next book, maybe you should think about having the characters, don't worry about this part of the story anymore. If there's like conflict about race here, like, just make a story for everybody. And you start to hear that from people. And I'm not just talking about in publishing, I'm talking about like readers and fans, family members, friends. Like, there are all these people kind of going back to the idea of Soot's father and his painting. And like, I had family members who were like, just don't bring any race into your writing. You're doing such a good job. Like, white people don't want to buy your book if you're writing about race. So make sure you don't bring that back in. So it wasn't just coming from the publishing side. Like, it's something that people that I knew, Black people, were doing and telling me as well.
How'd that sit with you?
It never sat well. Like, it just didn't. Like, I hate when people tell me how to make my art. That's one thing I learned the hard way. Throughout my publishing career, like, it's my fourth novel. And one thing I learned in the previous 3 novels is that I hate people who tell me how to make my art. It took me long enough to be proud of being that weird kid. And so when people try to make me less weird and do things that are different, I rebel against it.
Also, the weird is what breaks through.
Exactly. But nobody believes that. Everyone says they want the weird thing until you give them the weird thing, and then they don't know what to do with it.
I had that conversation with myself today.
There you go.
Did this character, the author, ever have a name?
Yes. There was an early draft where he had a name. I can't even remember what it was because it never stuck. I used it for literally less than like 2 or 3 chapters of testing it out to see if it would work. And immediately I just hated it because it reduced the narrative down to one specific story, which just never was meant to be. Like, this is meant to be a universal story about the Black experience all across America, not just by any one particular person in any one particular profession. It's meant to be the universal story. So the name had to go.
What about the multiple Kellys?
What about the multiple
Just
Kellys?
the idea that all the women are named Kelly. Is it just that's the way he sees the world of Kellys? It's like he can't differentiate, so all the women have the same name. I just thought that was interesting, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. I'll be honest.
No, that's fair, and I'm trying to avoid like getting too personal into this one. But you date people who are have certain traits that kind of carry over. You start to notice patterns in your dating sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of play with that a little bit. Like again, like there's some semi-autobiographical components in the book. So I wanted to play with this idea that he was, and also there's a theme about him searching for this one person and kind of finding her multiple times, but never really recognizing that she was the right person for him, or there was something special there. So he just kind of keeps hitting these Kellys over and again until he finally figures out like, this is the person I'm trying to, be with.
Mm-hmm. Was there always going? Well, that's not the right way to put it. Did you start out to write a novel with humor? Was it a humorous novel that took on a serious tone, or was it a serious novel that took on a humorous tone, or were they always in concert?
No, it was a comedic novel that got serious very late in the process. I wrote the first draft like in 2013 or so, and it was all comedy. There was nothing about myself. There was no racial stuff. It was just an author on book tour and some laughs. And then around the time of the Freddie Gray incident and the Baltimore riots, I've got a really good friend who lives in Baltimore. He and I were on the phone every day for like 3 weeks during the Baltimore riots, me checking to make sure he's okay, us talking about like the trial and what was happening. And that was when I was getting overwhelmed by it all and trying to find my voice and my way to to think about what was happening. And he very adeptly said, hey, you're a writer, like you should write about that. So I started writing all these side stories about my past and about being Black in America and like the issues with it. And somewhere I went back and melded that to the comedic parts of the story. And that's where Hell of a Book came out of.
We've got a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to get to a couple of them right now. Is there any connection, Jason, between Trayvon Martin and the author and the kid gorging on candy in chapter 18?
Yes, that's a very good catch. That was very much a direct kind of nod to the Trayvon Martin situation there.
JP on Instagram. I love the Nick Cage scene. Have you had any interesting interaction with a celebrity during your book tour travels? That was actually when you were on my show, we asked you, what should people look out for? And you said it was the Nick Cage references. That's what you told us. So there's another one. Why Nicolas Cage?
So I have not had any particular zany interactions with celebrities. Kurtwood Smith, who worked on Resurrection, he and I became friends, and he's a very cool dude. We had some fun in LA one time. But yeah, so I'm a big Nick Cage fan. But the reason the Nick Cage thing worked for the novel is Nick Cage understands how people see him and how people see his career, and he controls that narrative and guides it. And that is something that the author in the story very much wants to be able to do, is to control all the characters. I think people want to be able to control and understand how they're seen, and kind of control their voice and control their perception. And that's something Nick Cage, I think, does masterfully. So it worked thematically for the novel. And
it's so funny. He's got the movie out about that. Right
yeah,
now.
Exactly. The timing could not have been better for that.
It's hilarious. Let's get another one in here. This is from Charlotte. The book has such a strong voice that just seems to propel forward almost like a stream of consciousness. How did you, quote, get in the zone each time you sat down to write to bring that back to the page?
Yeah, that was actually one of the easier parts. So much of the voice of the narrator is there's a lot of my voice in that. A lot of my friends who read the book, oh man, you're all over the page here. I can see you everywhere in this page. So for me, the voice was probably the easiest. It definitely took some work to modulate it. I'm a big fan of film noir, so that was easy to kind of fold in as well. But yeah, that was probably one of the easier parts. That was just me kind of being more vulnerable and being more present on the page. How I actually am in real life is a lot of how the author is in certain ways. So the voice was a part of that.
There's a really interesting part of the book that I read over a couple of times, the conversation between the author and the police officer who shot the kid. And in that conversation, the officer says, all they want to hear about is me and what happened. All they want to do is whittle me down to just that 1 minute. I didn't have a whole life before that. I wasn't somebody's baby once. Don't the past matter? Why did you want to include that conversation?
Because I wanted to add some some complexity to the discussion on those incidences. And that is not meant to like absolve anybody of any guilt or any, any kind of consequence for their actions. But it is to say that like everyone has a narrative before an incident, both police and victims of police as well. Like part of the problem with how Black people are seen in America is that like Black males in particular, like there are no children Black males in the eyes of the legislature, in the eyes of a lot of population. Like from the time you're like 9 or 10 years old, you're treated as an adult if you're a Black male. And everyone has a childhood. Everyone has a moment before they're seen as this thing. And so I wanted to kind of put that theme into like, if I say everyone, I can't just mean minorities. I have to also mean these individuals who commit these acts, because sometimes these events occur and the people that do them are horribly remorseful about them, and they spend their lives trying to cope with that. And again, that does not excuse the action, does not give any kind of absolution to the action, but it is to say that like all of us are people. And when you say that, you can't just be saying about all of us who look like me are people, but it says, no, we're all people. We've got to navigate that together.
From Instagram, did you have a media trainer? I
did. When The Return came out, my first novel, I went to New York and was in a very, very cool office, not unlike the one in the novel, and had a media trainer who was not quite as, weird as the one in the book. But yeah, I had a media trainer. Media trainers are real people, and they actually do great work. They teach you to talk about your work, which is good.
KNL said, can you speak more about whether the book was a love story? Was it about loving one's Blackness, learning to love oneself?
Yeah, that's exactly it. For me, the book is about, can you learn to love yourself when everyone tells you not to? Like that is the 10-word elevator pitch synopsis of what the novel is really about. And that's why, what page 1 or 2, like early on in the book, it says, never forget that this is a love story. And when you say that, people think it's the author and Kelly getting together, but it's not. It's about the author and Soot and the kid, all of them learning to love who they actually are.
Who plays the writer in the movie? Lakeith Stanfield or Donald Glover?
Donald Glover. Snap answer right there.
All right, let's just put that out into the world. Unless you have something to tell us.
No, I have nothing to tell you. I wish that I did.
There's a sense from the beginning, and this is I'm being Captain Obvious here, that Soot, the kid, and the author are all connected somehow. But it's ambiguous by the time you get to the end. Why did you want to leave that ambiguous?
Because I like to leave readers with something to think about. And I also want people to understand that these 3 lives have a lot of similarities in the way that the lives of all Black people and minorities in America have a lot of similarities, and they have to endure a lot of the same thing, but it manifests itself in different ways. Like, Soot's father was killed by a police officer. The author was not. His father was not. The author is someone who has to live with that, though. He has to live in the same world as Soot, and he has to live in the same world as these other people who look like him, who are all kind of unified by this existence. Doesn't matter where you go in America, every Black person has a pretty similar story. Everyone can relate to policing and to violence and to being afraid to go out at night and blue lights flash in the back of your car. Like all Black people know that fear. And so there's a unifying theme there. It's a dark unifying theme, but there is.
From Instagram, what's your next novel going to be about?
Right now, I'm not sure. Like I am definitely hip deep in a novel. Like I've got a couple of revisions going, but even I am not fully sure what the novel's about yet. So we'll see.
What's a question that you'd love someone to ask you that you haven't been asked yet? I'm coming all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah, you're so good at this.
I gave you 25 minutes.
You're so good at this. Like you're professional at this. Like you've done this before. I think any question about my hobbies outside of writing, because I have a lot of fun hobbies outside of writing. For instance, like I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a lot of fun. I play a lot of video games, which people never expect. People think writers don't play games. Like I'm a huge gamer. I think that anything outside of writing, because I have a pretty vibrant life outside of writing, which is fun.
That's excellent. I'm so glad to hear that you got to answer that question. All right. So we often ask our authors who they would like to have as a musical guest on Get Lit. And you mentioned Gangstagrass,
yes,
who we're about to have on, who we're about to invite on here. What do you love about this? Why was this the right band for this?
Oh man, what is not to love? So Justified was on television and they had the most killer theme song. Like the theme song to Justified. It was my favorite show, and every episode, this theme song would just kick. And after like 2 episodes, I was like, I gotta find out who these people are, because I was a big fan of like Bubba Sparks and like all those fusion kind of like those attempts at like fusion between hip hop and bluegrass, hip hop and country. And when I found Gangstagrass album, I found their albums. I just bought everything that they had. Like everything that was available, I bought a copy. I downloaded everything they had because it was such a hype fusion of, I grew up in the South, and like people in the South don't get to like glamorize that kind of music and tie it into hip hop. Hip hop was always New York or Atlanta, and Gangstagrass does something very different than that. And like, that's why I love them. And there they are right there on screen.
Yeah, let's bring them on in. This is our, hey y'all.
What's up?
So, Jason, I'm gonna let you be journalist for a minute. What question do you have for Gangstagrass, or just something you want to say?
Oh man, when are y'all coming back to North Carolina? That's my first question.
It's an honor to get questions from you, Jason. Your book is incredible.
Yeah, that book is no joke, bro.
Thank you. I just want to so I don't know, man. Like, what is your process like? How do you guys how do you function? What is your process like?
Just barely.
Yeah, it's called winging it.
Yeah, we all come from different backgrounds in music. So it's just a lot of fun in the studio, and a lot of just taking music from our childhood or music that's traveled with us and figuring out ways to put it together.
Yeah, I like what you said about, I hate how when people tell me how to do my art, because basically that's our creative process. Is we all, we come from different musical backgrounds, bluegrass, hip hop, whatever, but we just all put those elements together, and we don't really significantly alter that part of us, and we just add our ingredients, and it comes together and works somehow.
That's dope. I also I want to just definitely say I love to me, it's like you guys sound like you have fun making the music that you're actually making. And I think that's just the dopest thing ever, to people actually sound like they're actually enjoying making the art that they're making. One of my favorite songs you guys do is Western, featuring Kool Keith. Where that whole song where he's naming off all these weird country components, and Wrench is singing we're singing it back to him. That was so dope, and it seemed like that was just so inspired and fun.
Yeah, we do have a lot of fun doing this. Yeah. One of the tracks. Am I allowed to talk about the tracks we're sharing today?
Sure, we're gonna talk about them again, but yeah, go.
Hey, well, one of them came out of just me having fun with old fiddle tune I found from Solomon Northrop's book, 12 Years a Slave. I was just playing it, and these guys just came up with the hook on the spot, and they were having a hoedown, and it turned into a whole song on the album.
That turned into Freedom.
Yeah. You're about to hear it. So.
Awesome. I love it.
That was the segue of all time, gentlemen. Jason Mott, thank you so much. And here's Gangstagrass with Freedom.
Saw a bright red comet in the sky. I asked for its purpose and it gave me a reply. It said, soon come the day master dies, but first you must prepare, keep your eyes on the prize. To the beat of the drum, the light of the fire, we decide to be as free as a bird when it flies. So we're ready every axe, sharpen every knife, get our people inside ready and willing to take a life. There be none worth saving, soon done slaving, but now we must prepare as usual while we make it our plans to reach the promised land of liberation. Breaking the chains before the beast them awaken. Watch the houses ablaze before they cave in. No more would I please to the sky be forsaken. All praises due, there be much celebration. The plantation will be gone by today's end.
Ain't going no more to get this freedom. I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom.
I'm gonna take this axe and plant it in your back. I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom.
I ain't gonna wait no more.
to be about the challenge. Sitting at the counter to create some counterbalance. Broken windows, folks doing damage just to keep a black man from having a sandwich. I'm not even that damn famished. Promising Dr. King, hoping I can manage to keep it peaceful in the midst of this evil. But it's too much to take, damn it, I can't stand it. Might be time to go another route. Here come the bigs trying to drag a brother out. Coming with the cuffs, but man, I had enough. So that fist in the air, just punch him in the mouth. Now I'm running through the South, fleeing for my life. Fighting against wrong, cause we're needing our rights. But even passing laws ain't enough for y'all, whose souls are too dark to even see the light. So I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. We started on this march, now we gon' tear this mess apart. Come on. I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. There'll be no more marching. The beaming's the same as the day that he darkened the shores of our precious blessed mother continent. Took our ancestors and put them on the market. They stand fanning the flames that they spark with the evil intentions they had from the start. If we still have to fight, then we'll tear this apart, and peace will be found with a spear through the heart. Another plan is a brother man in power positions, sisters in greater control of our conditions. When it happens, I doubt you're gonna listen, yet somehow consider yourself a Christian. Now I'm on a mission to take these levels tilted, straighten it out for all my people that built it. Don't care whether or not guilt you feel, it's not gonna keep us from the freedom we will get. I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. No sir, I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. Take this system, then we kill it, then we fix it and rebuild it. Cause I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. No, I'm not, I said I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. Damn right, I ain't gonna wait no more. Nope, I ain't gonna wait no more. I ain't gonna wait no more to get this freedom. That's why I write freedom songs for the sake of my fam.
And now we welcome Gangstagrass to Get Lit. Hi, y'all.
Hey.
What's good?
All right. We got a whole bunch of folks. So I'm going to ask everybody to introduce yourselves and tell our audience who you are and what you do.
My name is Wrench. Official title with the band is Mastermind, but I sing and play guitar and make the beats.
I'm B. Farrell. I am the newest member of the band, and I play the fiddle.
Dolio the Sleuth, MC, vocalist.
My name's Danjo. I play the banjo, sing, write some songs.
I am R. Son, the voice of reason, Philly representative, MC extraordinaire, and comic book Jedi.
We also found out Danjo is a caller to the Brian Lair Show.
Yes.
Just going to out you right now.
Thank you so much for beating me to it. I don't have to say it myself.
All right. So, gosh, I don't know where to start. Wrench, I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to go straight. I'm going to go across.
All right.
Okay.
So you started back in 2000. Please correct me if I say anything wrong. 2006, when you started this idea. What originally brought you to the idea? What brought you to the mashup, bluegrass, hip hop?
I grew up with a lot of different sounds on the stereo at home. My dad's from Oklahoma, so it was a lot of honky-tonk music. But when I was growing up in the 80s, hip-hop was taking over. The breakdancing movies were coming out, Beat Street. So that's all my friends were listening to Run DMC, and Recess was about putting down some cardboard to do your backspins. And so there are just things about both sounds that I really wanted to have in music, and I didn't hear them in the same thing. I had to listen to this or that. But when I became a music producer, I really wanted to stick in some fiddle or some pedal steel guitar in with some block rock and beats, and I just had to start doing it myself.
Dolio, you were the second person to join. Is that right?
Yeah, Dolio and I were working together a while back because I started actually a honky-tonk hip-hop band called B-Star even before that, and that's how me and Dolio met.
Yeah, and then when he told me what he was doing with Gangstagrass, I was already sold. So,
what was it about that sold you? What just felt like, yeah, this is something I want to be a part of?
Well, I grew up in the South, and I was already country before I started really getting into hip hop. So, you know, we would watch Soul Train on Saturdays and Hee Haw on Sunday.
I think you were in my house.
Yeah.
We're about this. Oh, that's so funny. Hee Haw on, which one was it? Soul Train on Saturday, Hee Haw on Sunday?
Yeah.
It's the best thing I've heard all day. So Dan, you joined through Craigslist. You've heard all about this through Craigslist, is that right?
Well, I didn't hear much about it through Craigslist. I responded to an ad that said looking for a banjo player. And I've been in my share of bluegrass bands. So I thought, all right, here we go again. You know, another run-of-the-mill bluegrass band for me to play. And nothing wrong with that. I grew up in DC playing bluegrass with my dad, and I have a love for the music. But it turned out to be something a little bit different.
What was your first, a little bit different? So when did you realize it was a little bit different?
I mean, pretty immediately when I met the MCs and I started hearing the beats, and I knew it was something. You know, the world of bluegrass banjo in particular can be really tight and kind of a narrow niche, and everybody's trying to, you know, fight with each other just to get one half step forward. But I realized there was this immense latitude that you could just take 4 giant steps to the side and really do something progressive with it. And that's some of my favorite bluegrass music is progressive, you know, where it fits my favorite definition of progressive, which is to have one foot solidly rooted in the tradition where you come from, and then the other foot really going somewhere from there and actually doing something that's just tremendously exciting. And nobody else is doing this, you know? So that's been the fun for me for almost a decade. So
Brian, how is playing fiddle different against hip hop beats as compared to playing straight fiddle?
Everybody keeps calling me Brian. It's B. B.
Pharaoh.
My mom calls me Brian. Let's leave that for her, all right? What was that question?
B. Here's the question for B. How is playing fiddle different when you're playing against hip hop beats versus just playing it on its own or playing with bluegrass?
Now I come from, Dan's got more of the bluegrass knowledge, and I come from more of an old time background and a lot of jazz and a bit of classical in there too. For me, when it comes to old time fiddling, it fits in that it's supposed to be grooving. It's supposed to have a sort of hypnotic rock to it. And what really sold me on Gangstagrass was the MCs, Arson and Dolio, just really speaking truth to like water rights issues or speaking incarceration and putting some real lyricism in there. And when I heard them, I was like, all right, I'm
also sometimes he makes the fiddle sound like a turntable.
I do that. I get that inspiration from Tom Morello, honestly.
I love Tom Morello. Arson, let me get you in here. When was a moment when you knew that this was going to work? Or you knew you'd arrived at the right vibe, the right sound?
From the gate.
For real?
I've known Dolio for about 20 years. We met in a cipher together up in Penn State in '99. And so when he reached out to me that Wrench was looking for somebody to take Gangstagrass on tour, first of all, I was like, well, all right, this is D telling me something. I trust what he's going to tell me. And then he just sent me a couple of tracks. I was like, all right, yeah, this works. This is definitely dope. Because, I mean, Wrench got beats. And so my whole existence is, you know, to quote the great Fonte, dope beats, dope rhymes, what more do y'all want? And so he was coming at me with some dope beats, and I knew Dolio was always going to bring quality. And the unfortunate part is all of these guys are talented, multi-talented musicians and singers, right? I can't do none of that. All I can do is rhyme. So I have to be very, very good at it to be able to fit with this clique. And so when I heard Wrench's beats and knew that, you know, it was backed by D, I was like, all right, yeah, this is gonna work. And when I first hit the stage with these guys, with Wrench, the first time we hit the stage, I was like, yeah, this is gonna work. As a matter of fact, I got in a van with him. I had known him a couple hours and then just got in the van with, you know, 4 random white dudes and drove down to North Carolina, which I wouldn't recommend for most people, but, you know, it worked out for me.
So Jason stole my question, Wrench, about the songwriting process, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is the process like?
We like to come at it from different ways because there's like infinite number of ways that you can bring these things together, whether it's having the bluegrass folks like jam out a tune and then come up with a beat and some rhymes to it, or if you're coming up with a beat first or a verse that one of the MCs do and then writing bluegrass parts to that, you come out with very different feeling things. If it's more of a like a loop based thing, you get more of a hip hop production, or if it's more of an organic bluegrassy thing, we get a lot of variety out of actually having the process go very different directions.
Yeah, some of it's even come out of like just us jamming, or just be, you know, hanging out, playing them some music, and then wait a minute, say that thing again. Why don't you play that piece again? That's let's make that do something.
B, I want to circle back to Freedom, to the song we heard when it was released, I think on Juneteenth, and you said it was from Solomon Northrup's
Yeah,
The Slave. Tell me about that. That's really cool.
There's a tune in there that Solomon Northrop liked to play that's notated out in the book called Roaring River. And I just always, I like collecting these old tunes from books and from history. Another guy I'm into is old Francis Johnson's tunes that are held in like the Library Company up in Philly, or somebody like William Sidney Mott. To just to be able to have a tune that someone who we have such a firsthand experience or a firsthand account of his experience being enslaved, just to be able to share a tune that he enjoyed. I just like to bring that up. I like that to live through me.
Yeah, and it's weird because like at first I didn't know that that's where the tune had come from. When he was just playing it in the studio with us, and we were just our son and I were just kind of huddled off in the corner, and like it was like I felt the spirit take me over to say, okay, this sounds like something that you would hear on a plantation. But what if there was like a song that was like a Negro spiritual, but it was more about a slave revolt? And that's where the chorus came from. Like, let's take this song and make it an anthem for like, I'm not gonna wait anymore. It's time to take it now. And then we were like, okay, now we just take you through history for the rest of it, you know?
And we put we released it on Juneteenth, and that wasn't originally the plan. And I only want to mention that because there was, you asked Jason about whether whether the book was informed by those events. And obviously for us, we had written the song already at that time, but we'd scheduled it to come out a little bit later.
Yeah, we had recorded it in like February.
So like right before lockdown, we actually were in a studio together, which is not something we did for the rest of the year. We had gotten it in and it was ready to go, and then the events in May and June happened, and we kind of looked around and we swapped some stuff around and said, I think maybe now is the time. We're releasing on a Friday, it's Juneteenth, and we have this song. And so that was one way that we were able to respond a little bit to the events that were going on.
And the other great thing about it was not only were we able to put the song out, but we actually crafted a video. Shout out to my man Shanti. He's a video producer and MC up in New York. Another guy I met at Penn State, and he and I, and we all put together bunches of different parts and clips and everything to put this whole video together. And I reached out to a bunch of people in Philly and other artists that we knew that kind of helped us out with the whole video. And the whole thing, it came out fantastic. It turned out really, really dope. And just to be able, the idea to put the whole thing together and get it out there, it showed that in the midst of trying to get something done, if it sort of needs to happen in a specific space and it really needs to exist there, we got a good enough team and quality enough individuals that we roll with, that we rep, that were able to help us put together. Actually, my part in the video, my 14-year-old son shot my part in the video, like that. Just the whole thing, it turned out really, really dope.
Yeah, making it happen during the pandemic was beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
We're gonna hear another track. You're kind enough to give us another song called You Can Never Go Home Again. Who wants to tee it up? What do you want people to listen for when they hear this track?
All right. I want you to listen to his verse. like I said, I'm pretty dope. This is one of the most fantastic verses I've ever heard in 47 years of hip hop existence. This guy, man, it's really just impressive on a lot of levels. Check it out.
Yeah.
Gangstagrass, thank you so much for doing this and being with us.
Dude, it's been an honor.
Real pleasure.
Here's You Can Never Go Home Again.
I remember 20 years ago I was standing in that courtroom. My charges I could not defend. Last thing the judge said to me as he handed down my sentence was, "You can never go home again. Never go home.
I agree with everything that the judge said. If you come back around, I'm going out like Judge Dredd. What was in your head when you made those choices? I can only hope that you were played by voices when you made the decision not to listen to the one that was on your side when you started to slide. Mama brought you back home. She was broken down to the bone, cause you had been gone so long. But man, I heard the phone ring. She started smiling, but I knew that you was out in the street out here wildin'. I heard stories, I heard rumors of what you was doing, but I decided to humor mama and let you come back. It wouldn't be no problem, and if it was, guess what? I'm the one to solve it. When the cops came and knocking at the door, I swore to myself, I don't ever want to see you no more.
When you've done your time and you come back out that doorway, you will not find a loved one or a friend. You may return
The things these eyes have seen would horrify the strongest. When I left the home I haven't been to in the longest, I led a life by the sword, forced to fall upon it. The kites flew, there was nobody left to correspond with. Familiar faces either passed on the flip, so there wasn't much left for me to do except dip. Too many years lost off the lies of a snitch, so it was either do a bid or end up lying in the ditch. Now, left to walk across the land as a mystery. Every new town reinvent a new history. I turn my back on my past just to get to see a new day. Reframe my identity to get to sleep at night. Man, I need about a fifth at least. The dirty deeds that I did just to get to eat. Melancholy and emptiness, the unseen consequence of the conditions of release.
We found a man the other day hanging from the ceiling. His sentence was almost at an end, and there on his bed was a note so sad and simple. Said you can never go home again. Never go home. Never go home. You can never go home again. Oh, never go home. Never go home. You can never go home again.
Just want to say thank you again to Gangstagrass for those 2 amazing performances. And of course, to Jason Mott for being our author. We really appreciate your time, gentlemen. Okay, we have a new book, new month starting tomorrow. We have to thank a few people first because we're polite around here. Thank you to our partners at the New York Public Library, Brian Bannon, Tony Marks, and Andrew Medlar. They get those e-copies to all of those New Yorkers who want to join our book club each and every month. So thanks to you. Thanks to the Green Space team who make this all look so fantastic. Jennifer, Ricardo, David, and Emma, thanks for making these virtual events happen. And of course, to the producers of all of it, who also make Get Lit happen every month. That's Megan Ryan, Jordan Loft, and Simon Close. All right, we have a very special March Get Lit planned for y'all. We're going to be switching things up a little bit. We're reading a memoir this time around from a man who has won 4 Tony Awards. For the month of March, we are reading I Was Better Last Night by Harvey Fierstein. You know and love Harvey from his Tony Award-winning roles in Hairspray, Torch Song Trilogy, La Cage aux Folles, or you know him as the writer behind musicals like Kinky Boots and Newsies, or from film, Mrs. Doubtfire, Independence Day, Mulan. But maybe you don't know about some of the topics his memoir explores: his childhood in 1950s Brooklyn, his activism in the gay rights movement and the fight against AIDS, his struggle with addictions, and his road to recovery. Kirkus has called his memoir, I Was Better Last Night, a poignant, clever, and entertaining look at an impressive, unique career. New Yorkers, you can check out an e-copy of the book thanks to our partners at the New York Public Library. Head to wnyc.org/getlit to find out how, and we'll have some very exciting news about our March event very soon. So stay tuned for that. The best place to get all your information about Get Lit is on our Instagram, at all of it WNYC. Definitely follow us there. That's when we have little book club polls and meetings in between these live events. That is it for tonight. I'm Alison Stewart. I appreciate you watching and I appreciate you, and I will meet you back here next time.